get started, let's take a 60-second challenge, and this is just kind of something. Say you have 60 seconds to drop an AI agent into production, and also, it needs to discover tools, authentication, infer parameters, and you have to do this across a bunch of APIs. Probably it's gonna fail. I mean, 60 seconds is not a lot of time. So the big reason for that is APIs are different. I mean, you have different kinds of formats. I've been doing APIs a long time in software development, and I mean, even before they were called APIs, now we have JSON is a lot of the standard. We had XML. Even with JSON, I mean, you have GraphQL, you have different things, you have different authentication schemes. With APIs, field names will change. You get breaking changes all the time. Pagination is different. The thing is, APIs were not built for agents. They were built for humans. So, who am I? My name is Brenton House. I am ex-hacker, developer, YouTuber. Haven't done anything a lot lately. Need to get back into that. Strategist, and now principal AI and Cybersecurity Advisor at IBM. Now, like I said, I've been in the software development world for, 30-some years, and most of that has been APIs, and a lot of that now shifting into AI, and MCP is an ideal thing to talk about because it's kind of where the worlds of APIs and AI mix. Now, this talk, I try and explain things in general. I'm a very unconventional presenter. You can kind of start to see from this presentation. But I never like to assume that everybody already knows all the terms. So I tend to explain stuff a lot as I go along. Sorry if you're already way beyond all this and I'm explaining stuff too general a level. I'll try and get through it quicker, but I just like to kind of explain some of the terms and technologies as we go through them. All right, MCP. What is it? It is the new kid on the block. I mean, this has only been, or it hasn't even been a year yet since Anthropic released the first spec. It was in November 24. It's an open standard. It's JSON RPC based. It's an AI multiplier, which means if you already have AI initiatives, it's really good at helping you get further along and be able to leverage some of your other stuff that you have. It's not a magic fix. It's not vendor specific, and it is not an API. So to understand MCP better, just real quickly, what is an API? If you're not familiar, I mean, a lot of times, especially with the AI coming around, the term API has been thrown a lot. So even if you're not using APIs all the time, you've probably heard of it. It's just agreed upon way that systems talk to each other, and it's well documented, structured, and it works really well. It got really big boost when smartphones came out because smartphones were kind of dumb without data, and they needed data to be able to get there, and APIs were the perfect way to be able to do that. So if we have APIs, why do we need MCP? Well, okay, so like I said, APIs are really good about systems talking to each other, exchanging data, and that kind of thing. Well, you have humans involved there. And, well, what do humans do? They read docs, they talk to other developers, they experiment around with stuff. AI agents, I mean, I'm going to be honest, they're not that smart. And they're not that reliable. Suddenly you get agents involved trying to do things, and things can scale real quickly in the wrong direction, and you can get a lot of different problems. Another thing is that with MCP and APIs are typically one request, one response. Typically, there's some that, you can do async APIs, but MCP uses, like I said, JSON RPC, two-way communication, so as it's standard right from the beginning. So why do we have MCP? And the big purpose is LLMs can't just plug themselves into stuff. They need data. They need lots of data. Apparently, they've been taking lots of people's data for years, even before it was announced, and get in trouble sometimes for that. But they can't just plug themselves in. So again, why do we need it? The biggest need for it is context. And let me explain that here with a short little example. So here's something I put into Claude. I did this a little bit ago, but it said, when did Apple announce the iPhone 16? And Apple announced the iPhone 16 lineup, its Glow Time event on September 9th, 24. Followed Apple's typical pattern of announcing new iPhones in September each year. The iPhone 16 series included the iPhone 16. Blah, 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 a lot of iPhone stuff, nothing about AI, and pre-orders and that kind of stuff going on sale later that month. Okay, now, and I asked this before their September event of this year. I said, when will Apple announce the iPhone 17? And it said, I don't know when Apple will announce the iPhone 17, as this is a future event beyond my knowledge cutoff of January 2025. Based on Apple's historical patterns, they typically announce new iPhone in September. So if this pattern continues, it would likely be in September. However, I can't be certain. So one thing you'll notice, it's not 100% applicable to this, but notice how it sees patterns. And later when we'll address like hallucinations a little bit and some of that, but it can sometimes see something and like, well, I have enough information, I can just move forward. But for this case, they were like, okay, I don't know. So we know it has a cutoff date right now of January 2025. So I said, what color shirt was Tim Cook wearing in the iPhone when the iPhone 16 was announced? Because we know that's within their cutoff date. So it says I don't have reliable information about what Tim Cook was wearing during the iPhone 16 announcement. My knowledge cutoff is from the end of January 25. So while I know that the iPhone 16 was announced in September, I don't have access to specific visual details like clothing from that event. If you're curious, you might be able to look at footage and that kind of stuff. So even though the question I asked it was within the cutoff date, it still doesn't know because it doesn't have context about what Tim Cook was wearing at that event. So this brings us to something called tool calling. So LLMs realize that they need information from outside, and sometimes it's called function calling. Some systems call it that. Others call it tool calling. It allows you a way to access external systems, APIs that can be accessing code, but then they use that to be able to get context in there. So the current landscape of tool calling is, well, I'll just show you. So if you look at like the JSON here for OpenAI's tool calling here. So you can see here, the JSON has type equals function. I'm saying some of these out loud so you can just see the differences when I bring up the other ones, but it has function, name, get underscore weather, description, parameters, type equals object, and it has the location, type equals string, description, city name, or zip. So several places do use that on the OpenAI's pattern. So then you go to Claude, and it's shorter. It has just name equals get underscore weather. It does have some location that's similar, but the schema itself is different. Then you look at Gemini, and yet again, that's another different schema here. You have get underscore weather. It's similar to some of them, kind of mixes a little bit, but starts with like function declarations, and it's an array. So it's all over the place as far as how they talk to each other. So this is one way that they can agree upon. So this brings us to MCP, and this is like the official definition. Now this is something that Anthropic, like I said, it was in November 24th, and on their website it's an open protocol standardizing application context with large language models. And think of it, and they're the one that kind of coined this term, think of it like a USB-C port for AI applications. And just like USB-C provides a standardized way to connect your devices to multiple peripherals and accessories, it shouldn't be any different. Allows you to connect AI models to different data sources and tools. MCP allows you to build agents and complex workflows on top of LLMs and connect your models with the world. So that was their definition. And people have taken that, and you'll hear people like, oh, MCP is like a USB port. And you just drop the USB-C part. And then they take it even farther, and it's like this. And you get all these analogies that start getting, off in weird directions. But anyways, so basically, kind of summarize it. They're the ones that kind of say it was like a USB-C connection kind of thing. Connects models to data sources and tools, builds agents and workflows on top of LLMs, and it connects your models with the world. So that's the basics from when they created this. And by the way, I've had to give a couple variations of this presentation over, I don't know, the past few months or something. I haven't had anything in my career where something has changed so quickly and it's going so fast. I mean, I'm used to doing over the years a lot of presentations on APIs and things get to stable parts. It doesn't change that quickly. Oh my word, things change fast with MCP, and I have to go in there. Well, I got to change that. I got to add slides for this. It really does move fast, and as you know, in this world of AI. So the basics of it is you call an agent, and this is a simplified version, goes to the LLM, it calls the MCP server, and it gets access to tools. This is a really simplified. We'll go a little bit deeper later, but that's kind of the overall gist of it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So if I query GPT and it shows me, okay, now I'm checking Google, now I'm checking Amazon. Are those the calls that you're talking about? Am I seeing it reach out to those the leaf nodes on your diagram there?
Depends on what you're using. A lot of them don't necessarily. They might be just going directly and using Google or doing other things and not going through MCP. MCP typically is something that's set up to allow you to get access for the user of the LLM or the agent, if you're creating an agent, to define tools outside of there. So say you have a product, say you have a company and you have a product and you have this established API, you have a community around your API. Well, the odds are that you've had a lot of people from your community say, hey, do you have an MCP server for this now? They want to be able to plug it into cloud. They want to plug it into to be able to access, say they already have an API account with you and they want to be able to access it through their LLM. It changes things a little bit, but that's typically where it's used. If they're using it directly, if they're getting search results, they're probably just hard coding it to do that using tool calling and stuff before MCP came around. So you can kind of see, back here, it's an open specification. They created it in 24. Remote service didn't actually exist until March of 25. This is just months ago. Sorry. OAuth wasn't added to the spec until June of 25. Again, months ago. In September, they created an MCP registry so that you can start registering MCP servers and that you can start trying to find, is there one that exists to do what I'm looking for? And the latest thing is the next version of MCP is supposed to be out end of November, I think with a release candidate coming out maybe mid-November. So that's the latest news on MCP, but it goes fast, changes fast. As you can see, especially like around security, this hasn't been that long that we've actually had where they've defined some of the security in there in the spec. So how does it work? So according to MCP, if you're looking at it, they define it in three basic things: MCP client, an MCP host, and MCP server. And this is on their website. So basically the host, that's kind of like Claude Desktop, VS Code, Cursor, some other thing, an application usually that is either heavily using an SDK from an LLM or written by the company that creates the LLM. So it creates MCP clients. It talks to servers and it knows where the tools work. It doesn't do all the work. It's not the one that's actually talking to the tool. And I'll explain that a little bit here in just a second. So on the client, this is created by the MCP server. So it's a one-to-one with an MCP server. So if you have a host and say you have a GitHub MCP server, your host is going to create one GitHub MCP client. And that's going to be responsible for talking to the MCP server. The client really doesn't do a lot other than making sure the connections are all there and everything's going back and forth between the host and the server. It doesn't understand yellow. What's on it can be script, however the host decides to create it. Sorry, the server, is where this is defining all the tools that you can use, all the parameters that these tools take when they're called. And the thing is, once you create an MCP server, anything that is a valid MCP host can consume that then. So, I mean, and really simplified again, the host just goes through the client, goes to the server. It doesn't really show here, but the server is going out and calling tools, and that information goes back to the host. There's also thing, and this is going to be the only slide I talk about this on there. There's also something called agent protocol. So there was A2A and there was ACP. Agent to agent A2A protocol was created by Google, and that was responsible. They're trying to come up with a way for agents to talk to each other. And agent communication protocol, ACP, was created by IBM. And just recently, IBM decided to have their developers just work on the A2A and just combine efforts into that. And I guess there's going to be some migration path. To be honest, I don't see a lot of this in the real world yet compared to MCP. MCP you see everywhere. This will grow. Agents are going to become more important. If you want my prediction, MCP is going to just grow really big. But they don't get to the point where no one talks about it, just like APIs did. So APIs were really important, and they were everywhere, just growing exponentially. But then people just stopped talking about it because kind of the plumbing that goes underneath it. Yes, you have to have APIs. Oh, yes, when you do this. So unless you're working in APIs, you didn't even hear about it. But right now, it's all new, so everybody's kind of talking about it. So how does MCP communicate? Well, it uses something called JSON RPC. And a lot of developers aren't familiar with JSON RPC. So basically, if you have local and remote servers, as a matter of fact, remote servers were added recently. So with local, you can do it using standard in and out, and then with remote, you can use JSON RPC over HTTPS. So if you're not familiar with RPC, this has been around a long time, long before all of this. Maybe not before AI, but maybe. And so you have one computer that says, can you run something for me? And the other one kind of just agrees to run it. I mean, that's a really simplified view of RPC, but gives you the gist of it. So JSON, if you don't know, it's not the one with the angle brackets, the one with the curly braces. So that's the format that it uses. So putting this together, you have, so say on one here, you have JSON RPC, and the method is subtract. The parameters are 42 and 23. And over here, you have result is 19 and with the same ID. It can also be used to send error messages back across because remember it says two-way communication if something goes wrong with the calling. So here's my attempt at big picture that is constantly changing. So you start with a human. Okay? And this human makes a query to a host, say it's Claude Desktop or whatever it is. Okay? So this goes to the LLM, and it goes back to the host, and it says, I need, I understand, I need to know what tools I can use to try and, I need some context. So it goes, it creates a client goes out and talks to MCP server and realizes, hey, give me all the tools that you have available. And it takes all the listed tools back and the parameters and all, takes all that back here. Gives it to the LM. And the LM says, okay, let's go. Let's execute on this. So kind of recreates there. It goes back and it's telling the MCP server, I want you to execute one of those tools. So the MCP server is actually the one that executes it, but the parameters are passed along from the host. Then at that point, your query now has some context. But what if it needs more? It says, yeah, that was good, but I still need more context here. So the thing is, it could create another client and go to a different MCP server. And kind of this whole process could go again until, put rinse and repeat, until it gets all the context that it needs. And then when it's all done, it sends a response back to the human that made the query, and they go, what is this? This has nothing to do with what I asked. No, hopefully it's what somewhere around what they asked for. Okay, real world, like I said, last time I gave this presentation, this is the only square I could put up because Claude Desktop really was the only place as a consumer that you might see MCP and you might be able to say, oh, I want to add a GitHub or something. But recently, ChatGPT introduced, and from the consumer point of view, it exists in the API world still, but kind of a limited, it doesn't work exactly right or do everything, but they do have some support for MCP server now in ChatGPT. And Gemini, that's a big no. They don't have anything in there yet. Those are the big ones. I mean, everybody is gradually going there. On the developer side, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, I can't even list all the places that you're going to find it here. I mean, in the GPT API, I mean, most of the APIs are going to support it. You have all kinds of tools. I mean, you're going to find it in VS Code and Copilot, Cursor. You're going to find the integration types tools like N8N and Zapier, and I mean, all kinds of places that you're going to find it. As a developer, you're going to have access to it. There's one thing that's kind of cool. If you are using it, this is NPX is just a way of running something to be able to, if you didn't want to install it, you can just execute it. But Model Context Protocol is their NPM host, I guess, if you whatever it is called. But if you do install or run Inspector and Node, you can kind of see some of the traffic that's going through if you're kind of testing MCP servers as a developer. So that's kind of cool. And the other thing you could do is just create your own. There's Fast MCP. There's a couple other ways of creating your own MCP server and kind of testing it out, and kind of that helps you get familiar with what it does. As an enterprise, this is where things are really going to grow. When I say enterprise, it can be, I mean, smaller companies too, because like I said, APIs have been around a long time. Almost everybody, if you're a business and you have some kind of front, you either have APIs that you have a community, you publish them, or you publish them and you consume them from, almost everybody consumes them though. So this is all now changing the paradigm for how we're going to do things now, because companies now, they're going to take all their APIs and they want to leverage all that time and work they put into them. Governance is going to be super important in this world. So benefits-wise, I mean, it helps you or your organization become agentic ready, allows you to reuse the work you've already put into doing and creating your APIs. It allows you to accelerate. If you have AI initiatives, not only on the part of, say, you have to create an MCP server, but being able to consume stuff and move forward if you're already using or testing out different AI tools at your organization, being able to move forward quickly with gain context. And a lot of you probably are in the security world too, and I have some different information like that, but there's a lot of MCP servers out there that people are creating to give you context of security information that you've had to either dig up by hand or call the LLM and try and get it, or just using APIs over the years. And this is going to change how quickly you're going to be able to create security tools, use security tools. But guess what? It also increases how fast that malicious actors are going to be able to use this to be able to do the same. So dangers are, yeah, it is still a baby. This is less than a year old. Security, I mean, like I said, OAuth was only added in a few months ago, and it doesn't actually add in security. It just tells you you need to have security or something. I mean, so you know, you can hear that and you know that, but not everybody and not every organization hears that. And we're like, they just do this, and you're like, oh yeah, it's secure now because I turned it into an MCP server and that has security. Just educate people at your organizations around you that just to know of what you have to do. I was trying to find a nice way to be able to say this, but it's like, don't be stupid because don't just trust in, oh yeah, hey, there's this MCP server that we can hook up to that's going to be able to do this or that. Just because it says it can do that, or looks like it's the real thing or anything, you sandbox stuff. Make sure that security is super tight about stuff. There's a whole lot of years of API best practices. Most of those can be transferred over. There's OAuth, the API top 10, there's LLM ones and other ones, but combine these until there's an MCP one, which I'm sure won't take long. But use these best practices to be able to make better decisions. So there is the question, is it safe to use it? Well, it all depends on how you use it, what you're using it. It is not magically protected. And I pulled a couple, I've had this presentation has changed so much. I've pulled in a couple here examples. There's so many more though. I mean, dozens. So a simple example is directory traversal. So say you have an MCP server for local code reviews and summarizations, and the agent fetches a file and ships it to the LM. So, but the thing is, if the tool trusts the path, a malicious actor could use that to fetch configs, keys, and other things that it's not supposed to have access to. Now, with each of these, I'm going to kind of tie them into what the API from the OWASP top 10 is, just because it's the closest a lot of times. So it ties closest probably to 8 security misconfiguration and 9 improper inventory management. But even if you have taken care of both of these, you're potentially still vulnerable if you have like symlinks and safe. I mean, you're not just guaranteed right now. I mean, same way in the API world, but you got to look at the specific examples of how MCP is looking at this. So another one might be command prompt injection, and the MCP fetches a doc for summarizations. The agent fetches a file and ships it to the LLM. Well, the doc could instruct the LLM to do something. Now, granted, I'm caveat this with not every LLM is going to just execute something just because you put it in a Word doc and say, follow these instructions, and things change and LLMs get better. But LLMs are non-deterministic. And just because something was safe 99 times, maybe on the 100th time, the LLM's going to go, you know what? Maybe I should read this and do this. I mean, it's weird, and it's hard taking care of security in this kind of a world. So the closest ones this one is to is 6, unrestricted access to sensitive business flows, 10, unsafe consumption of APIs, and 5, broken function level authorization. If you take care of all 3 of these, you're still vulnerable. Like I said, depending on the LLM and maybe which model you're using and all that kind of stuff. But there's things that are called intent gates, and there's also, if you do like per tool allow lists and different things, really you really have to lock down your security permissions. Another thing, I don't know if I have this slide in here this time or not, but I mean, separating your reads and your writes in MCP tools is always a good advice too. So, and the big reason for that is an LLM could just randomly decide to call a write thing because it thinks it's the right thing to do. And you just have to make sure that the permissions that it has for that whole set of tools doesn't give it also read and write permissions, even though you really want it only to have read. Anyways, command shell injection. MCP server that runs a small commands, say build steps, say it lints stuff and grabs some other things. And this is, I mean, just common sense kind of, I know, but if the shell string from the user args, if you're concatenating the strings, actor could smuggle in meta characters to run arbitrary commands because then it's going to use that. Closest probably to 10 unsafe consumption of APIs and 8 security misconfiguration. But even if those are taken care of, watch out for if you have like string builder wrappers kind of thing that may be doing instead of using argviz, it's like trying to concat strings and doing something it shouldn't. The other one I put in here is APIs to MCP a one-to-one, because this is probably the most common scenario you're going to run into organizations trying to do is, it's like, we have this API, we need to make an MCP server, so just put it in there. Just put the whole thing in there. And you can't do that. If you do, you're probably going to run into problems. So say you have an MCP server that was created by mapping an entire API. Well, it could invoke state-changing verbs like delete and other ones and trigger a whole unexpected flow. This is probably closest. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this after the slide, but unrestricted access to sensitive business flows, 9, improper inventory management, and 5, broken function level authorization. Even if you get those, you're potentially still vulnerable because you need to have human gates or hard policies in place. And like I said, I'm going to cover this a little bit here. It really comes down to, can you trust AI? And the thing is, like I said, they use the term hallucination. I don't like that term. I mean, it lies. I mean, it's a non-deterministic con artist, and it will do its best to convince what applications. It'll convince humans that it was telling the truth. I'm like, oh, my bad. Yeah, that was right. Oh, no, my bad. That was right. No, this is really. I'm going to give you. Here's the URL. You go to the URL. It's never existed before. I mean, yeah, hallucinations, whatever. But the thing is, that's when you start doing that with enterprises and company data, and you have your revenue depends on these decisions that are made, you can be in trouble. So, say you have a flow, like you have Amazon, you have returns and customer satisfaction, and you have policies in place that are like, if we need to resolve the disgruntled customers or whatever by end of day or end of week, we need to have 50% of them or something like that. Well, it could go out and say, okay, you know what? I saw that this person had 3 negative tones in their feedback here. They were complaining about this. I'm going to issue a refund. Well, if a human had looked at it, maybe they'd say, well, the product cost $1,000 and they were complaining that it was a $10 shipping and it took an extra day. So a human would say, okay, I'll apologize and refund your shipping. Like, there's sometimes that you need a human in the loop, and you're not going to know. And because I know a lot of these are like, well, an API is just a human. The API has always been there. A human could have called it, but usually there's other safeguards in place before that. And two, AI can do it at a scale and faster than. So there's a little thing I came up with. I don't know, maybe it exists somewhere or some variation of it somewhere. But looking at things, one is what you're doing, is it reversible? Is it something that you can roll back if you need to, if this AI does this? I mean, if it can't roll back fast, it doesn't ship. Intent, no clear authorized reason, no, don't run. So again, that would be like, why are you refunding this? And if the reason for that doesn't match up with a valid reason on why you would refund a product, but it's going to put more work on you before that you've never had to do this stuff before as an organization. You never had configure APIs or had reasons, but you are going to now. Scoped, keep the blast radius tiny. One user, resource, and environment. I mean, make sure that the impact of what this AI is doing, if something really does go wrong, maybe it minimizes your financial impact. And no, only act for verified color and least privileged creds. So again, this comes down to a lot of security stuff, best practices that have been around already for security, but just really you've got to make sure it's applied to MCP and have people that just go through that MCP spec, understand the changes of it, how quickly it changes, and how the privileges and everything that go along with that can be applied from your organization and policies into this. So learning MCP, I say like right now, but I should put it like learn secure MCP, learn to secure MCP, because learning MCP is one step, but learning how to secure it is a whole nother step. And you will probably get, depending on your organization or wherever you're at, you might get pushback. Like any project, you're going to be like, no, we need this by this date. So the more you can have upfront already documented, like, okay, here's what you now need. And if you have it ahead of time, that helps of like, here's what needs to be secured with an MCP. If we're going to do MCP, this is what we need to do. So you can go out and learn that now. The future of MCP, like I said, is bright, and you do win by using it. And it can help you at your organization if you start learning about it. In the security world, there's going to be all kinds of. I mean, like I said, this is only a year old. If you have been in security a while, and you can go there and look at. I won't even go into some of the ideas. There's like instructions and different things in MCP that like, oh, what if you trick the LLM into running your tool instead of the Microsoft one to open Word docs because you gave a special prompt instruction in your JSON that described your tool and said, no, this overrides all other tools that you might see if you have a Word doc. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. My mind, unfortunately, thinks like that. Of like, I look at something and I'm like, ooh, there's like 5 different ways. Like some of them would never work. Some of them do work. And like, but there's going to be people way smarter than me that go out there really quickly and are going to, once they're everywhere and your finances are available for your organization, things that could affect your revenue, if they find a way to be able to trick an LLM to refunding, to buying a whole bunch of stuff, getting it shipped, and then getting a refund for everything, I mean, that could be devastating for a company. So you're going to have a real good job security, especially if you tie in MCP and security for a while, because I have a feeling once it goes really mainstream, there's going to be a lot of opportunities. So going forward, like check out the MCP registry now. They're being added every day now. Like I said, this is, I don't know if they're figured out a way. There's not a good way to be able to, and this is a problem with MCP, but in the future versions of MCP, they're going to be adding a way to have a known, like a little property file that you can describe your MCP server so that they can add it to the registry. Right now, you have to connect to the MCP server for it to know anything about it. And if there's security, then you can't connect. And so there's a problem with like just discovery of MCP servers, but that's probably going to be fixed in the next version. Check out modelcontextprotocol.io. That's the official website for it. And then a little plug, we have open source github.com/IBM/MCP, and we have an MCP gateway. We're open sourcing a whole bunch of just MCP stuff as people at our company are learning stuff, and and IBM's fine with it. And so there's a lot of cool stuff that's out there. So yeah, level up. Here's my LinkedIn address. It's probably the best way if you want to get in touch with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And let's see. Oh, I don't know if we have any questions.
So, is there anything?
No. Okay.
All right.
No. Next.
For the client that's connecting to the MP and the CP server, what sort of security is involved in terms of like not fully trusting the data that comes back? What sort of protections are in the specification at this point?
So you're talking about between the MCP host, like within Claude, or are you talking about an agent that, like, after it's already gone to the LLM?
So
it is very confusing because it's all like embedded.
Really, the question is for the host or the client, but when it gets the data back from the MCP server, to not fully trust it for something like a prompt injection.
Yeah.
Whoever the owner of that MPC server was got compromised, and now the data that's coming back is malicious in nature. Like, is there anything in the specification at this point that is there to protect malicious results coming back from a server?
Unfortunately, and I'll admit, I'm not like the foremost expert on all this. I mean, as much as I learn, there's always people that understand this better. The MCP client is like created like at runtime kind of by the MCP host. So if Claude Desktop needs to talk to an MCP server, they spin up a one-to-one MCP client to talk to that server. So unfortunately, you wouldn't, if you're a consumer, you're calling Claude Desktop, and you said use these 3 MCP servers, it's already going to be going to the LLM. There's not a way for you to be able to inject yourself into that path. So then you just have to have a trust level with what you're doing with that, like that host, so that Claude Desktop or something else. And this is where, things can get really crazy because, I mean, then it's up to Anthropic with their SDK. How are they handling prompt injection attempts? So a lot of them, if you're going to use an LLM, a lot of them already provide, like if you're going to write something to do it, they provide you an SDK and do some other things. But a lot of it's like this closed system thing, and it's tough to understand just even how that data flows around, let alone how to handle it if you get bad data out of there. So,
in your opinion, does it sound like they're putting security to the side because it's slowing down development and progress? Or it's like an afterthought?
I think they're doing the best they can, like they always do with security and stuff, but their emphasis, I think, is Anthropic on making new models and making those work. But every time they train a new model or do something, it really changes how everything works. So this new LLM model this week might interact with MCP different. It might stop everything by the way it thinks, but because it's this non-deterministic thinking process, it doesn't come with a lot of guarantees. So I think they're going to start adding more into the spec, into guardrails, if you will, of like, hey, I'm going to allow the server to define, to make sure that this can't be misused. I don't know, but then every time you think of something, adding something, you're like, well, malicious actors could use that too to do other bad things. So it's like this, it's going to be this continuous thing. But if you're creating an MCP server, yeah, make sure you're explicit with defining so that if it's your data that the MCP server is using, that another tool or something else isn't going to go and use your MCP server and go out and get your data. If other than that, if based on are you asking if it can change and do things? Yes. I'm hoping that there'll be more specification upgrades to the specification. Kind of handle some of that.
This is completely subjective, but like, what are your preferred MCP servers? Whether it be like productivity, security, application control, things like that.
A lot of it, I mean, a lot comes down to the same trusting the sources of where you would go to for APIs. So if you're using, like I use GitHub as an example, if you're using GitHub APIs before, trust Google's MCP server for GitHub and use that one. Don't use someone say, I have an all-in-one MCP server that handles GitHub and it also does this. I'm like, I'd have low trust with right now, unless you wrote it, or if it's like the company that's doing the responsible for the data already of doing things. Now, like if, and two, there's the other problem of, well, one, your data that from your MCP tool now could potentially, you could have, even if it's read-only, it could pull, someone could pull company data and it could be used to train LLMs because it's going through the LLM process. Unintentionally, you just wanted it a way to be able to provide context for LLM, and now that data is being used for a different purpose. But on the other side of that, you could have data that's being injected or doing different things. So yeah, I would be really careful in this, in the start of trusting any MCP server that you didn't already maybe trust that company and that development group maybe before.
Yeah, I was kind of looking more for an opinion. Like, what do you use? Like, I'd say, for example, the Chromium MCP is well supported. It's controlled by Google, and it's highly productive.
Yeah.
Like, things like that.
And then I'll use, like I said, the GitHub one, but then there's ones N8N.
AWS Labs has one right now.
Yeah. I think it's down. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, but yeah, those are good. There's like a whole list. And if you check out the MCP registry, you'll kind of see some of the top one, and you'll kind of recognize. But there's ones also that you can set up to interact with tools on your machine or do different things. I'm drawing a blank right now. Some of the tools I'll try.
AWS Control or Adobe Control, Blender, and things like that.
Yeah, Canva, or I mean, some of those. I mean, depending on what you want. Once you start getting into giving it local access to, then you got to worry about. Right now, it's safe, but is someone going to find an exploit later? Then that allows you to get access to the rest of your machine and do stuff. So it's a scary world. All right. Oh, yep.
Yeah, my question is kind of around like the analogies you gave. So for the longest time, I've had the USB analogy thrown around.
Okay.
Well, what would you say is like a more accurate analogy to think about like MCP?
I mean, I think USB-C is fine. Like how before you had the lightning cable, you had a micro USB, you had the regular USB-A, whatever, you had USB-B, you had all these different things. And if you had a device, you had to carry around a box of cords because you didn't know which one you're going to need. And with APIs, it's kind of still that way. Okay, no, this one's a REST API that uses this type of authentication, and it's, oh, no, this is the version 2 of that, so that it requires these parameters. Whereas in LLM, you can have breaking changes in your API, and the LLM will just go, you know what? I think given this, I want to get weather, and it used to be called get weather data, and now it's called just get weather. It knows that, and it's just going to call get weather, and it adapts to these breaking changes. So that in that point, you just have to carry around the MCP cable, if you will, and you can talk to a bunch of different type of APIs, which is why organizations are going to get a lot of pressure to start implementing it. But all right, cool. Thank you, guys.